everybody, and welcome back to another video. As usual, if you haven't already subscribed, please consider doing so. I would greatly appreciate it, and also feel free to leave down in the comment section down below if you have any questions or suggestions about what you would like to see next. So with that said, let's get started. Today, I think we'll keep working on our Salesforce Visualforce tutorials, and I believe in the last tutorial we kind of went over the standard controller and how that kind of works. And I think for today, we'll take it a step further and we'll start working with standard list controllers. And like I mentioned last time, I've created a playlist in case you guys want to kind of follow along the entire tutorial series. So yeah, let's jump into our code. Right here, I'm just displaying in my Visual Studio Code the Visualforce page code that we wrote for the last tutorial. Like I mentioned, we worked with the standard controller, and in this specific example, we referenced the standard account controller, and then we just we were then able to reference a few of the account fields, and we had also a save button. So essentially, this page allowed you to make some changes to a few different fields: the account name, the account phone, and the account type, and then you were able to save it if you made a change. And for today, like I said, I want to go over the standard list controller, and I guess it's a good idea to know the distinction between them. A standard controller, or a controller for that matter, whether it's custom or not, it allows you to act on a specific record. So as this example right here, we are using the standard account controller, which means that we can make a change to one account record. Whereas with the standard list controller, we're now able to act upon a lot of different records, or a list of records rather. So that's essentially the difference. If you're going to want to do like a mass edit on a lot of records at the exact same time, you might want to use a standard list controller. Or if you want to display a bunch of different records at the exact same time, you may want to use a standard list controller. So for today, I think I'll show you guys an example where we might load in a bunch of maybe like opportunities or accounts. I'm not sure yet. We'll walk through it together. But essentially, we'll load in we'll use the standard list controller to load in a bunch of records, and then we'll have some way of making a bunch of different edits, and then we'll make that save as well. And then we'll kind of observe those changes happening on the actual records themselves. So let's kind of jump into it. As usual, I'm going to go ahead and run the command to create another Visualforce page, just to kind of keep all our code separate. And for this one, I will call it Visualforce standard list controller. And we'll just drop it in the default directory. That's fine. Once the command is running, we have our page here. And I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. And the syntax to define a standard list controller, it's not much more different than defining a standard controller. So we're still going to have our attribute standard controller. And in this case, I think I'm going to, let's stick with the account. So we're still going to want to work with the account, but then in order to specify that it is a standard list controller, we have to make use of this other attribute called record set var. And essentially kind of think of it this way. If we're working with the standard list controller, and we define this variable right here, this is essentially like a collection variable or a list. Like think of Apex or JavaScript or whatever programming language you're most familiar with. Essentially what you're telling it is we're going to work, that we want to get a bunch of different accounts, and we're going to want to store that in this variable that we're going to define in a second. So in here, I'm just going to say, whenever we access this Visualforce page, use the standard account controller and essentially make it a standard list controller, and dump all the accounts that we're interested in into this account variable right here. And then we're going to go ahead and use this accounts variable right here further down in our code that we're going to write right now. So with that, we have essentially defined a standard list controller, and in this case, it is for the account object. So I hope that makes sense. Next, what I think I'm going to go ahead and do is just, we'll create an Apex form so we can go ahead and make changes to it. And then also let's go ahead and define our page block buttons. And I know I'm kind of just breezing through these tags right here, and that's because we've kind of already gone through them in the previous tutorials. So if you haven't seen those tutorials, I highly recommend you do so, because I'm kind of going to just kind of gloss over these right now. But anyways, yeah, we're going to create a page block buttons tag, and then inside of here, we're going to go ahead and create our command button. And again, just to very quickly recap that, we create a page block buttons just so that we're able to see that save or edit or whatever kind of button we put in here at the top of the page and at the bottom of the page. This helps us not have to write, our command button in multiple places. We can kind of just place it at the top right here, and then we're good to go. So we're defining the command button. We'll just close it like that. And then we want to have a value, which is just kind of like the label for it. And we'll just put save records. That should be fine. And then for the action, if you recall from the previous tutorial, we're going to get a method from our standard account controller, and we'll have access to like the save, the delete, the quick save, so on and so forth. And I'm going to just go ahead and use the quick save, which is essentially just a save, but it doesn't redirect us to the standard record page. It just kind of keeps us on our Visualforce page after we click on the button, which is fine. And I do realize I made a mistake in the previous tutorial, which was that we have to have this page block buttons instead of a page block itself. So I'll go ahead and do that right now. Page block, like so. We'll open and close that, and then let me go ahead and just copy this very quickly, and we'll paste it in here. So that way we don't have no issues. Okay, so far we've gone ahead and created the buttons that will now display at the top and at the bottom of the page. So let's go ahead and save that. And I'm even going to go ahead and just deploy source to org so we can kind of see what we're working with. Okay, once it's successfully deployed to our org, we can go ahead and jump into it. And to access our Visualforce page, we can go to the URL and do /apex and then the name of our actual page. So I believe it was Visualforce standard list controller. That was the name of our Visualforce page. So I'll go ahead and click enter, and you'll see here that, we have a Visualforce page with just the buttons at the top and the bottom of the page. And not much to look at, but at least it's in our org now. So let's go ahead and jump back into our code very quickly. And in here, let's kind of keep working on it. So inside, right after our command buttons, I'm going to go ahead and I think for this one, I'll probably just create like a table so we can kind of like see all the different records a bit more cleanly. So I guess kind of to introduce the table, it is page block table like so. So I'll go ahead and open and close those tags. And then the table, it takes a value, and the value is, or rather the value that we need to put in here is basically just the record variable that we have here. So I'm going to go ahead and use the squarely brackets to denote that we want to use a variable or identify a variable. And it is accounts. And then kind of similar to how our page right here allows us to basically give a name to our list of accounts or whatever we're going to work with, the page block table does as well. So basically we're going to work with the accounts. So like I said, think of this as like the list of records, and then now we want to work with like the individual record. So we'll use the var attribute, and then this one we can give it a name. I'll just call this ACC, short for account. So basically think of like a for loop, right? Where this is like the list right here. And then this page block table is going to iterate through each account. And for each account, we have this record name account. And then we want to do something with it, which is just to kind of display the fields of that account itself. So inside of the page block table, we work with this tag called column, like so, column. And I'm going to have an opening and closing tag like that. And actually, I don't want to get too into the specifics of the page block table, but you can have an apex column with just like this closing tag right here. You don't have to open it up, kind of like how we have the page block table. But if you do that, we kind of miss out on a few things. Like if we just keep it like this, well, we could kind of just like define the value. And then for the value, we can kind of like, I guess, we will use our variable like that. And then we can say like name or so. which it's fine. I don't think we want to update the name of our, or I guess in this example, we won't allow the user to update the account name. So we'll keep it like that. But if you do want to allow your user to make a change to a field, we need to use a slightly different markup for our column. And in this case, we'll have to actually open and close the tag like so. And in here, we will use a slightly different attribute called header value. And the header value allows us to kind of give like a custom label to our field name. So you'll notice here for this column, we don't have a header value because essentially this value attribute, it's kind of like assuming that the label for this column is just going to be whatever the label of this field is. But if we do it this way, we can have the ability to have our own custom label. I guess you could say that. So for this case, let's kind of work with the same fields as the previous tutorial. We used the type field. So we'll, instead of just saying type, we'll say, what is the account type, just to kind of make it a bit more interactive looking, I guess. So I'll go ahead and space that out. And then inside of here, we're going to use an Apex input field. And this will let us allow the user to actually make changes to that actual field itself. So for the input field, we have our value attribute. And then we have to use the syntax to grab that field. So we're going to say account, and then I think the name of that field was just type, like so. So basically with this, we've now tied that field on the account to our Visualforce page, and we'll actually allow changes to actually happen. So let's go ahead and copy this one more time, just to do it for another field. And I think if we go back to our previous episode or tutorial, which was the center controller, we used the type field here and the account phone as well. So I'm gonna just kind of copy this because I'm a bit lazy. And in here, we'll just replace this with the phone. And then we'll say here, what is the account phone number? Like so. So essentially, kind of like what we're doing is this very simple Visualforce application is going to allow a mass edit of accounts for these specific fields. I guess you can kind of think of it. It's not very useful, obviously, because it's just a tutorial. We're not doing an actual, production grade application that might be useful to our customers. But I think you guys get the point. This kind of allows us to see how to work with standard list controllers. So once we have all of that, let me go ahead and hit save. And let's try to deploy this to our org, and hopefully we don't have any errors. So deploy source to org. And it looks like it went through just fine. So let's jump into our org to see what it looks like. I'm going to go ahead and refresh the page. And you'll see here that we have what is the account type and what is the account phone number. But we don't actually have any information here. And that is because we haven't passed in any data to our standard list controller. And so here is kind of like an interesting quirk about our standard list controller. So let me jump into the code very quickly to kind of explain that. As you saw, when we refreshed the Visualforce page, we had no records to look at. And essentially the reason why we saw nothing is because we don't have anything in our we don't have any way in our Visualforce to like tell the controller what account records we're looking at. And we probably won't have that until or an easy way of doing that until much later. Probably when we start working with like custom controllers or anything. But like an interesting way of just kind of getting some records into our Visualforce page is by going into our accounts list views and just looking at one. And let me kind of explain what that looks like. So here in my org, I'm on the accounts, and I'm going to just kind of like go to my like list view called new last week, or actually let's go to one that actually has records. So for example, all accounts. Now, if we go back into our Visualforce page and refresh it, you'll see here that we now have a bunch of records in our Visualforce page, the Visualforce standard list controller page that we were just working on. And that is because the standard list controller, if nothing is passed to it, it will try to grab context, and the context will basically be the list view that you most recently looked at for that specific object. In this case, we looked at the list view all accounts for our account object, And that is the context that we are currently in. Now, if I go to a different one, like for example, my accounts, or rather, let's go to new last week, because I think that's empty. So you'll see here that it is indeed empty. And now if we go ahead and refresh our Visualforce page, the page goes back to being blank, because now the context is this new last week list on the account object, and that is empty for us. So in this context, it is completely empty. So just something to know about. Like I said, we don't have a way right now of like just showing specific records on an account, and that is probably gonna change once we start working with like custom list controllers or custom controllers, because we can kind of like use logic to show only specific type of records to our users. But anyways, that's a little bit further along. I'll probably start making videos on that probably like next week or so when I have some more free time. But anyways, just for today, let's go ahead and just go to, I guess, all accounts. So now our context is for this list view, all accounts, and we'll go ahead and refresh this page right here. And now we can make changes to it. So like I said, in this very simple example Visualforce application that we've created, we basically ended up with like this mass edit account Visualforce page. So I can go ahead and change ABC computing to like customer direct, and then this one to a prospect and prospect. Basically just make all the changes you want. And then, we can give it different phone numbers like 555, 55, 5555, and then paste it to like how many ever you want. And then once you're done, we can go ahead and click on save records. And if our code or if our Visualforce page doesn't have any errors, which I don't think it does, you might have noticed that, and I'll click it again. If you pay close attention to the little icon on the tab, if I click save records, you see that it was indeed refreshing. But because we used the quick save option in the command button, which let me jump into that, you'll see right here, the action is set to quick save. So it will make the changes, but then it will refresh and keep us on our Visualforce page. Whereas if we were to just use the save action right here, it would save our Visualforce page, and then it would kick us into probably the standard list view page for the accounts. But because we want to stay on the Visualforce page, at least in this example, I use the quick save action. Anyways, to kind of confirm that our changes actually did go through, let's go ahead and go into at least a few of these records. So ABC Computings, let's go ahead and jump into that. And the change we made to this was we changed the type to customer direct. And we see here the phone number set to that, as well as the Ascendancy bulk company. Let's go ahead and jump into that. I'll just open up like 3 of them right here. And you'll see here the type is set to prospect, and there's no phone number for this one. And I actually can't remember if I did put the phone number for it. I want to say I did. It looks like it might have not passed through, maybe because I used an incorrect format or something. So let me go ahead and jump back and let's try it one more time. So I'll go ahead and hit save changes, and it looks like it goes away. So there's probably some issue. Let's kind of debug it and see what happened. After a few minutes of going crazy trying to figure out what the issue was, I realized that I used account as my variable instead of the variable we defined in our page block table of ACC. So yeah, that's exactly why it wasn't saving, because it had no idea what account is. So let's go ahead and make that change. So we're now going to be saving the phone number on our ACC account, or ACC record rather. And hopefully that works. So let's go ahead and deploy this source to org. Once that's done saving, let's go ahead and jump into our org. We'll go ahead and refresh this. And let's go ahead and make a change. So we'll also do 555, 555 to that. This account, Incidency Bulk Company. So let's go ahead and hit save. And then let's jump into the actual account record itself. And let's go to the accounts. So let's go ahead and click into the Incident Bulk Company, and you can already see in the list view right there, but yeah, the phone number actually got updated. Let's go ahead and do it for one more before we wrap this video up. I will choose just the next one over, I guess, and same thing, we'll do 555, and then we'll just change the last number just to make things a bit different. Let's go ahead and click on Save Records, and let's jump into that records. So it was AccuFarm, I believe. And we'll see here that it indeed is updating those records. So yeah, like I said, just a very simple Visualforce application utilizing the standard list controller that essentially allows you to create like this mass edit Visualforce page, which I guess could kind of be useful. There's a bunch of different other use cases as well, which is documented in the documentation, which I will leave in the description box down below. But yeah, hopefully you guys found this useful, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.